Hello and welcome back to another edition of the News Project's in-depth series on GNAT-TV. I'm Andrew McKeever and today is Thursday, June 26th, and it's a great pleasure to be joined virtually today by Molly Gray. She is currently the Executive Director of the Vermont Afghan Alliance. Many of you will remember her from her time as the Lieutenant Governor of the state between 2021 and 2023. We're really pleased to have her here today to talk with her a little bit about how the Afghan residents who have become our new neighbors in Vermont are faring and how that's all going. So, Molly, thank you very much for making the time for this conversation.
Andrew, it's really a pleasure to reconnect with you, and thank you so much for your interest in our work at the Vermont Afghan Alliance, but more importantly, our new neighbors, this incredible Afghan community around the state that continues to grow. So thanks for the opportunity to connect.
Well, my pleasure. It's always great to see you. And I guess just to get us started, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about the Vermont Afghan Alliance. I mean, what do you do and what is the mission?
Sure. You can call us the VAA, the Alliance. Sometimes the community we work with calls us the Vermont Afghan Airlines, Vermont Afghan Aliens. But we are a nonprofit based in Burlington, started in the wake of the U.S. evacuation or withdrawal from Afghanistan in August of 2021. Co-founded by a former Navy SEAL who works here in Vermont but served in Afghanistan, and an Afghan man, Wazir Hashimi, who went to school in Vermont, always planned to go back to Afghanistan, but then in August 2021, got home, quickly turned around, came back to the state, and decided when the first Afghans started arriving in Vermont to be part of supporting their resettlement. The VAA started as a scrappy, volunteer-led, GoFundMe-funded driving program. We bought a Toyota Corolla, we still have, and providing volunteer driving lessons to new arrivals. That's something that's not normally provided as part of refugee resettlement. And as you know, and we all know, you can't get anywhere in Vermont, even in our bigger cities, if you will, like Burlington and Rutland, oftentimes without a car or access to consistent transportation. So that's how we started. And then in 2023, we received some support from the federal government and the state of Vermont to open an office, hire Afghan staff. And today we're a team of 7 providing employment assistance, general case management support, so help with medical appointments, navigating insurance, mental health and wellness, immigration legal assistance, English language instruction, statewide training on civics and also legal rights, and support with housing, so housing placement and some early assistance when folks still first arrive and are getting into a home, but sort of more comprehensive wraparound services, mostly for individuals in northern Vermont, so Chittenden County, Montpelier, and then sometimes folks who have been resettled in the White River Junction area. And we work very closely with the communities in southern Vermont. We love ECDC, the Ethiopian Community Development Council, and teams there, and know that they're Afghans statewide, which is pretty special and pretty unique for Vermont. And there's a whole story to be told there in and of itself.
Roughly how many people are we talking about here who have arrived from Afghanistan since 2021?
It's hard to tell the exact numbers because, of course, some people think they want to be in Vermont, and then they get here and say, well, these winters are pretty long, the cost of living is pretty high, so migrate out of the state. But then there are a lot of individuals who maybe were resettled in Texas or Nebraska, and the word gets out that Vermont is a place where there are a lot of jobs, that there's a significant amount of community support. So all told, we estimate 600 Afghans in the state and really spread out in these differing communities. So not just in the greater Burlington area where in the past refugee resettlement was largely based. The post 2022 world of resettlement in Vermont has included resettlement in of course, Burlington, Colchester, Winooski, Montpelier, Hartford, and White River Junction area, St. Albans, Rutland, Brattleboro, Bennington, and I just heard this morning that a new Afghan family, or maybe two, will be going to Springfield. So, in Manchester, I think there maybe is a family in Manchester, or there may be, but rural refugee resettlement happening in Vermont, and I think that this is the largest population of Afghans per capita in the nation, here in Vermont, in the Green Mountain State.
Interesting. I guess I just wondered, what's the process for kind of getting them here? I mean, their situation is somewhat different than people who want to emigrate from other countries. I mean, they are caught up in a 20-year-long war and a very chaotic withdrawal we made in August of 2021. Are these people who had to get out of Afghanistan right away after the Taliban returned to power and have been kind of living in Pakistan or other countries since then? Or do they come more or less straight through? Can they leave Afghanistan now? If someone a month ago said, okay, I'm out of here, I want to go, could they just simply leave and they would be given the paperwork to kind of document their way to get here?
There are so many misunderstandings about the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think first we have to recall the history, and you mentioned part of that. The U.S. was in Afghanistan for 21 years. I remember I was just graduating, or my senior year of high school, when that happened. So my entire adult life, all I know is the U.S. presence in Afghanistan. There are many people my age and younger that they don't know anything different. And then if you think about Afghans, I mean, many of the staff who work here, they can't imagine Afghanistan where the U.S. isn't there. And the U.S. wasn't only involved in military operations, but also basically every facet of life. The rule of law system. So imagine judges, police, training police officers, training prosecutors, supporting all sorts of agricultural programs and projects, helping to support an education system, massive infrastructure and development projects, U.S. Agency of International Development projects, and then certainly supporting diplomacy and the diplomatic mission. So when the U.S. withdrew so quickly, it was estimated 125,000 people were evacuated in that 2-week period, many of whom came to the airport and did likely fear for their lives, right? But we're like, we're gonna find a way to get on this plane and get out of the country. But it was an estimated 145,000 individuals who worked directly with the U.S. military or supported the U.S. diplomatic mission or the intelligence community, the U.S. intelligence community that did have a large presence in Afghanistan. It was estimated 145,000 of those individuals were left behind, plus judges and prosecutors. And so in August, we mark the 4-year anniversary of the withdrawal, but the evacuation is far from done. And I don't know the exact number of people who have been evacuated, maybe 60 to 70,000 over the last 4 years. But of 145,000, that's only half, right? So those individuals and their families are in hiding in Afghanistan, have fled to Pakistan, where the conditions are quite dire. They face deportation back to Afghanistan. They pay exorbitant prices for goods and food and daily essentials. They are largely just trying to survive and wait for applications to be relocated to the U.S. to be processed. Then, and this was before Trump took office. Now we have President Trump in office, an administration that's taken all sorts of actions to prevent Afghans from traveling to the U.S., but also to possibly return people to Afghanistan where they would face persecution. So it's so, so important for all of us to remember that history. We made these individuals refugees. And in my mind, that's what makes this community a little bit different than other immigrant communities, which is not to say anyone should be treated differently, but I do believe there is an extra responsibility to those who risk their lives to support the US government over 21 years.
Right, a lot of them were translators or contractors in one way or another, or helped out, or military diplomatic people there, and yeah, it would certainly seem like we owe them whatever we can give. So when they do finally arrive here, just to jump ahead a little bit, how are they sort of given a choice? Well, you can go to Vermont, or you want to go to New York, you want to go to Nebraska. Do they have some kind of choice in where they go, or is it just a case of, someone in the State Department says, well, you three can go to Vermont, but you other guys over here, you're going to go to California or whatever?
So there's how it was and how it is now. So how it was under the prior administration and for decades, not centuries, decades under U.S. Refugee policy, the State Department, the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration would work with international organizations like IOM, International Organization for Migration, UNHCR, the UN High Commission on Refugees, and then also stateside with states that agreed to accept refugees and to have designated refugee agencies. Here in Vermont, we have USCRI, the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants, and then ECDC in southern Vermont, as you know, in Bennington and Brattleboro. So there's a conversation that happens with PRM, the State Department, with the international organizations and also with these designated agencies, and a determination or an assurance process to determine which refugees are going to go where in this country. Oftentimes, I think people can sort of say, I want to go to Vermont, or there can be an offer saying, we really think Vermont's the best place for you. That was before January 20th of this year. January 20th marked a incredible change in policy. That first night after President Trump was sworn in, we may recall he was behind the Oval Office desk with the big pen, and it was just one executive order after another. One of those executive orders was an order to end or suspend, but for all intents and purposes, hasn't really been unsuspended, the U.S. refugee admissions program. So that was to stop or halt all planes with refugees flying into the United States, and then subsequently in the weeks after that to end all funding for designated resettlement agencies to support resettlement. So today, what remains is that if an individual, so refugees, legal refugees, sorry, I should back up, are kind of P1, P2 category, they are not allowed to come into the US. However, many Afghans have applied for what's called a special immigrant visa. It's a visa that they're entitled to because of their work with the US government. Special immigrant visas are still being processed by DOS, Department of State, and USCIS, Homeland Security. But those individuals, even once their visa is processed, they are now required to cover the cost of their flight out. So that could be a flight out of Afghanistan, but more often it's a flight out of Pakistan because they have to do a number of interviews and a tremendous amount of vetting that happens at the US Embassy in Pakistan. So in effect, there are now logistical and deeply impactful financial restrictions that are preventing even special immigrant visa holders from coming to the US. We've partnered with an organization called No One Left Behind, a national nonprofit that privately funds and pays for flights for Afghan special immigrant visa holders to get out of Pakistan. And they've already flown more than 2,000 people since January. So once I share that, because it's only once someone gets here that we can support a resettlement process, and we're not a designated resettlement agency. We've worked to take the funds that we do have to support employment, housing, driving lessons, English language instruction, also working with our community partners. And I know ECDC and USCRI are doing this as well, to try to say, we're going to continue to welcome and support with what we have those who still need to get out, because we know it's the right thing to do. But it means giving a lot less support, and really trying to rely on volunteers and community networks and saying, let's make this more of a community effort, because there's no support from the State Department, largely.
Now, relatively recently, I think President Trump put in place a travel ban on about a dozen different countries that included, I guess, people trying to come here from Afghanistan. It was also apparently you considered it to be something of a threat to the people who are already here. I wondered, is that order kind of still in effect? Has it been modified in any way, or rescinded, or technically speaking, are these folks still kind of in jeopardy of being forced out of the state and sent back home?
Yeah. Two things happened. There's a travel ban and also temporary protected status, ending TPS for Afghanistan, which I'm happy to talk about if you like. The travel ban, we had heard rumors of it for several weeks, but I'll share personally, I was having such a hard time believing that this administration would be just that callous and brazen in kind of blocking Afghans from coming to the US, especially because the reason for the travel ban, the stated reason, was that the countries on the list did not have government systems, didn't have governments that could ensure proper vetting. And I'm not going to speak to that, but I am going to speak to the fact that individuals who worked with the US government are the most highly vetted individuals in Afghanistan. I mean, they went through all sorts of background checks to be able to even have that connection and to have the employment. So it's not that the Taliban would be vetting individuals applying to come to the US. So just the logic for Afghanistan didn't make any sense. We know that with the travel ban, there are some exceptions, but even those exceptions aren't entirely clear in some cases, and we're just waiting to see how they play out. So green card holders are still able, legal permanent residents are able to travel with their green card if you're an Afghan national. So leave the country and be able to come back in. Special immigrant visa holders are apparently allowed to come into the United States, but we don't really know if they're going to continue to process special immigrant visas. We believe so, but it's not clear. But in this moment, the deep, deep concern that I have is with the thousands of wives and children who were left behind. So
They're still in Afghanistan.
That are still in Afghanistan, almost 4 years later. And what the travel ban means, it's a dedicated policy of family separation if there isn't an exception for the reunification of families. When the US withdrew, as we know, it was chaotic, it was dangerous. Many, many men who worked with the US military and intelligence community were told, you need to leave your wives and kids here. There may not be enough space on the plane. We promise you that they will be reunited with you in the United States within 1 year. And it's been 4, and I'm not aware of a single family that man that we serve hundreds of Afghans, who has been reunited with his wife and kids. So, and what that means practically, if you think through the process, it means the body's in Vermont, but the heart and the head are truly still in Afghanistan. Every penny that's not needed to survive here goes home to wife and kids. It's still in hiding. So it has economic impacts. It has major and very serious mental health impacts, and it's so extremely cruel, and it's not sustainable. So the travel ban, we're going to keep working these cases. We're going to keep pushing through our congressional delegation for family reunification. And as an organization, maintain our ability to welcome families and to hope that that's going to happen because there's no other way. Afghans will not permanently stay in the United States, in my view, if they can't be connected with their family. It is just extremely cruel.
Yeah, that does sound like not a situation that's going to work in the long term. I was also wondering, are any of them can have a concern about getting deported or being involved with ICE or anything like that and being sent back home, whether or not they want to go back or not?
It's happening. There is a case that we're now aware of here in Vermont, which I can share some general details because I do think it's very, very important for your listeners to know. Uh, Trump, the Trump administration also ended temporary protected status, TPS, which TPS, generally, if a country was designated a temporary protected status country, individuals could not be returned there because conflict, instability, natural disaster. The Trump administration said, nope, the Taliban has stabilized things. We're now going to send people back to Afghanistan. That's deeply, deeply concerning because in some cases, individuals did come to this country after going to the US Embassy in Mexico through the CBP-1 program, sort of like a pre-registration asylum seeking program. They didn't end up coming into the US through the US-Mexico border lawfully. They had to apply for asylum once they arrived, but the Trump administration has ended that program, the CBP-1 program, and said it doesn't exist. And we're basically saying you didn't enter the US lawfully. So now, even though you've applied for asylum, we've seen Afghans in this country and others rounded up at their asylum interviews where they go to their asylum interview requested by the government, and ICE picks them up and initiates immediate and urgent removal proceedings to remove them from this country. So that is deeply, deeply concerning. The Taliban is persecuting, is killing. In some cases, I think there's 200 instances people have been killed because of their work for the U.S. government. And to say that Afghanistan is a safe place for women, I mean, it is not a safe place for women. I mean, women's rights are most disrespected there, potentially the most disrespected place on the planet. We know that. I mean, that's pretty well documented. So we're concerned, and our job really feels imperative and important at this moment. I'm fundraising like crazy, doing everything that I can to support the continuation of our work and working with our partners across the state.
So once they do get here, those 600 or so that have arrived here in Vermont, do they come here with a job kind of already in place for them, or they get here and then it's a case of finding out what's available? And I'm sure in a lot of cases there are many of them who come through with experience and background in one field, and just to kind of economically survive and pay the rent, so to speak, they more or less have to take whatever job is available, even though it might be completely different from what they did before. Is that the case, or is it?
It's a little bit of both. I feel very proud of the employment program that we have set up. Yassin Hashimi, who's an Afghan refugee himself, used to work at the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. His first step is to figure out with people, what skills do you have? I know, for example, this is a conversation he would have. Like, I know, for example, that you were a Supreme Court justice in Afghanistan. That's not going to be possible here. But how can we take those legal skills and bring you into a position that's, let's say, legal adjacent? Working at a community justice center, for example. Incredible trauma doctor just arrived and now is working at the UVM Medical Center as a medical assistant, I think level 2. It's not the best situation, but at least it allows for an individual to draw on their career, and in Vermont right now, because we have so many open jobs, I like to say, like, with 19,000 open jobs, like, let's figure out what do you want to do and what direction do you want to take? It's a lot of work and it has to happen really, really quickly as soon as someone arrives, because we want to build financial resilience and financial security as quickly as possible as we also work to find housing. So right now it's 2 months of housing assistance and a security deposit while also rapidly finding someone employment. That's not a lot when someone's coming with absolutely nothing. But it's been incredible to see people find employment, find a livelihood, and really start to thrive. And that's what like gets me up in the morning in this work.
And you mentioned housing there. I would imagine the fact that housing is in short supply, at least affordable workforce type housing, has that been another kind of sticking point, trying to kind of find places for them to live? Since that's been a problem for a lot of Vermonters who have been here for a long time.
It is a challenge. We have a dedicated housing program person who is on the phone pretty much nonstop reaching out to landlords. And it's too late if something's already posted on Zillow or a website, because you'll be fighting with, 6 or 7, I don't know, dozen applicants, right? I'm not entirely sure, but it is very competitive. The cost of housing is also just extremely high, and salaries don't match those costs. So we have to be really thoughtful and creative in working with individuals on a financial plan. So how can we make sure that you're working one job, you're working 2 jobs? Are you going to get a roommate? How can we make sure that we're working to ensure financial resilience and self-sufficiency? But I will say this, I remember, I think it was in the last year that one of the chief economists for the state said, there is no way Vermont is going to birth its way out of our workforce crisis. So we have to figure this out. And I think we are figuring it out. It's hard, but we're figuring it out, and really being able to work with people and understand what is the best situation for them, and really trying to find good paying jobs. And they're out there. So
well, as it's often been said, and as I'm sure you know way better than I, we need all the new neighbors we can get. We're an aging state. We need more younger folks to come here. We need more people from everywhere to come here, or at least that would be a plus for our state. So it would be to our best interest, I would think, to kind of help make their transition here as easy as possible. Gosh, one last thought on all of that is I would imagine the language issues must be also another hurdle. Although I suppose if some of them were translators, maybe they already have at least a working knowledge of English. But I suppose for many, that's anything that requires a lot of communication skills. It's kind of going to be hard for them.
It is. That's a huge part of it. And English language learning is connected to a lot of other pieces of life, right? Obviously, employment opportunities, being able to be self-sufficient. I think the challenge is that it's also connected right now to family reunification. If someone still feels like their whole life and their family is still in another country, they have to make as much money as they possibly can, working second shift, sometimes working 60 hours a week, just to be able to send money home. They don't have time to invest in English language learning. So we're really trying to figure out, okay, how can we work with employers to have English language instruction happening on the job, like as part of carving out part of a workday, and really trying to, again, push the family reunification piece, because I think that's sort of the connector for true access and the ability to truly resettle here. But the English language component can't be understated in terms of its importance, and it's a part of this, like, the rapid wraparound of services, right? Employment, housing, driving, English language learning, and they're happening quickly and they're happening at once, and really helping people to be able to stay here and succeed.
Well, certainly wish you well with all those efforts. Like you say, we certainly owe these people something, a lot, and to just sort of leave them kind of in a limbo is certainly not, doesn't seem like the right way to go at all. It's hard to see how there could be any justification for that. But just to kind of leave on a somewhat more positive note, as we need to run here, I noticed on your website as I was preparing for our conversation today that each one of your staff members has a favorite Afghan dish listed next to your profile there, and yours is kufta. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So what is kufta?
Oh my, there's so much cooking and so much amazing food that I've had the chance to be exposed to through this work. But kufta is, it's kind of like a meatball, but it's so much more than a meatball. It's beef that is cooked in this really special tomato, heavy cumin sauce, and it goes on Afghan rice. And it is just, it's so satisfying, it's so delicious. But I've had all sorts of things, dipioza and bolani and Kabuli pulao. It's like the food exposure has been really special, and we try to make a lot of time in the office to get together, to eat, to just be human, and trying to find our common humanity in all of this. So I just want to thank you again for having me, and also to share with your listeners that there are so many ways to get involved. Certainly, we hope that you'll reach out to us, the Vermont Afghan Alliance. We are running a fundraising campaign because no matter what happens in Washington, we're not going to give up on this community. And we have, our federal funds have been cut, so we're working hard. But certainly ECDC in Southern Vermont needs support, and they need engagement too. So I think all of your listeners have people right in their backyard who would love to have further engagement and support. So get involved, and thank you again so much for taking the time and for caring and sharing more information about this incredible community. We're going to do it differently here in Vermont, and I'm so proud of that.
All right, well, we'll leave it there for today, but once again, thank you, Molly Gray, Executive Director of the Vermont Afghan Alliance. Very important work that you're doing, and I hope the story has a happy ending in the end. But thank you again for making the time for this conversation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you who've been watching. I hope you found the program interesting and informative, and well, we'll see you again the next time. Take care.